What's up, guys? So right now we're actually doing a vlogging test to start you off here. We're gonna head up to a park where I think we can get some cinematic footage. I've gotten a bunch of footage over the last few days, and so far I gotta say I'm pretty impressed. So I'm coming from the Ronin-S. FeiyuTech sent me this to try out. This is the AK2000. Really impressed so far. Let's go ahead, we'll get some footage, have some fun, and then I'll do a comparison with the Ronin-S back in the studio. But right now, let me know what you think. We're walking with it. We're using the Canon EOS R with the 16-35 f2.8 on here, stabilized, looking pretty good in the monitor. But with that, let's go get some fun footage. See you guys at the park. All right, guys, so I've been taking a look at the FeiyuTech AK2000 for about a week now, and I gotta say, coming from the Ronin-S, I've always had a love-hate relationship with gimbals. It's something that I always wanted to use, I knew I should be, but they're so big, they're so bulky, they take up a lot of space in your bag, especially when you're traveling, even if you're going around town, and this for me seems to be kind of right in that perfect balance. So it's significantly lighter, or at least feels like it from when you're holding it. It's very portable. The nice thing with these are they come off, so depending on what type of shot you want to get, you can actually take the feet off, reattach them here, and you can see, boom, now we've got many different types of shots. It's going to be stabilized for what you want. So I'm a big fan of this so far. Let's dive in and find out a little bit more. So kind of right off the bat, one of the things you're going to notice is that this has a touch screen, and that for me saves everything because you don't have to pair this with your phone. A lot of gimbals are going to require your phone to change a lot of the settings. You can do a lot of the things on the fly right here. Change what mode it's in, lock whether it's going to pan or tilt or what it's going to do. You can actually calibrate it from that screen. You can change the weight settings of the type of camera you have on it. I really find this very usable, and I love this touchscreen implementation. It does respond to certain types of swipes, so you can get into the settings that way. You can swipe out of the settings. So think of like a DJI Osmo Action or a GoPro Hero where you're kind of swiping through different menus. It's not quite as advanced as that, but that's a similar gesture system to what this is going to use. On top of that, it does have a joystick. I do have to say I prefer the joystick on the Ronin a little bit better. This is flat, which is nice in terms of form factor, but it kind of twists and it's not as smooth or tactile as something like the Ronin's going to give you. That being said, it performs pretty much the same function, so it definitely does work. On top of that, then you're going to be able to see your battery life, what mode it's in. It's going to let you kind of on the fly make cool adjustments. You can also do time lapses. Speaking of time lapses, one thing I found really cool about this is inside of this touchscreen, again, you can actually set a time lapse. So if you use something like the Osmo Pocket, it's actually very familiar to that. You basically set point A, so you actually physically move the camera around. I set point A, then I move it to point B. I set how long I need the time lapse to be, and boom, it's going to record that nice time lapse for you. Again, something without requiring the app. It's just so easy to use. The fact that they've incorporated this touchscreen and this comes in at a cheaper price point than something like the Ronin, I'm pretty much sold. Now, it's not perfect. There are some downsides. My biggest complaint with this right off the bat is the fact that you actually have to charge it through a separate charger. So you're going to have to travel with that and take it with you. On top of that, you can't plug this in. It does have a USB port, but that's not going to provide any type of charging. It's actually a micro USB. It's not USB Type-C. And we're in 2019, so I kind of would have liked to see USB-C on this. So in terms of overall build quality, it's definitely a mixed bag. Some of these are definitely metal. I'd say a good majority of the entire body's metal. The grip itself feels really nice. It is rubber. We'll see how long it actually holds up. Again, I've only had it for a week. Now, there are some plastic parts. Some of the buttons on here, the back of this is definitely a plastic part, so you do have to be aware of that. Could be something if you dropped, it might take some damage, but they also look replaceable in that regard too. So it's something to be aware of, but definitely I'd say the build quality is about a mixed bag. Give it a 50-50. One thing I want to point out actually on this that I like for photography that I didn't notice on the Ronin, I believe the Ronin fights you a little bit more, is you can actually move this around pretty well and kind of lock it where it is, and then you could take a photo. So something to be aware of that kind of adds to the photography aspect of this gimbal. You might not use it a lot, but it's nice to know you could kind of use this as a tripod or a mini tripod if you needed to. So the knob on the side of this is going to be really usable, and check out why. So you can actually control our roll axis up and down, and then we can actually pan all with this knob. Full 360, essentially every way. If the lens is actually small enough, even the up and down, you can do a full 360 degrees. So another really cool feature this has built in, that's not an add-on option, that can also control the focus ring, which we have. We're gonna try that out in a future video with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K. So on that note, I think it's time to go back to the studio, and we're gonna go ahead and stack this up against the Ronin-S side by side. We'll talk about the major differences, what I like about this over that, and then vice versa. See you guys there. Number one, first and foremost, is the weight. And I think this is why this feels so much smaller to me. This is 3.3 pounds. I tried out 2 scales here. Online, it only tells you the weight without the batteries. So I've got the batteries, and I want to mention the tripods on both of these. 3.3 pounds, 4.8 pounds. So that's a significant difference. That's a third of the weight shaved off. Size-wise, you can see they're pretty comparable size-wise, but at the end of the day, I think also because of the weight added in, this feels much more maneuverable. The other thing, and it's minor to call out, I just like that this always balances back how it should, where on this, I think you could probably get it a specific way, or if you measure it perfectly, it'll do it, but as soon as you bump it, it's gonna fall out of place. Super minor, I don't even know why that bugs me, but just something to call out. I really like how balanced this is. Next up, I do wanna talk about the mounts that they come with. So even though these are swappable, on most cameras, not all, you actually need to attach this adapter plate. The problem is you have to screw on this adapter plate, then you screw that to this adapter plate, and it's just kind of all over the place. With FeiyuTech, it was built in. So when you've got something like a A6400, even an A7R III with a decent sized lens, you have no issues attaching this, and it actually sits very well on here. So you end up with a little bit of gap between the lens, and then they do have the adapters if you need to, so you can actually balance the lens. Honestly, I don't usually use those. However, on DJI's, the plate by default, when you put it on here, so hopefully you guys can see that, it's actually at an angle. You couldn't actually balance it. It's either gonna be angling the camera up if we put it level, or you're gonna have to kind of mess around with it. Doesn't work. So I really like that they just built it like this. I kind of wish DJI would have done that as well. I saw online actually too, their AK4500 model has a detachable plate. To me, that's awesome because at the end of the day there, you don't have to worry about balancing it every time. You can take it off, shoot it handheld, and then boom, throw it right on the gimbal. That's one of my biggest complaints. However, with the 2000, this has something really nice, which is the thread is just a hand screw on here. So I don't need a screwdriver, I don't need a coin, I can just screw this on and off, and I actually found, even when it's mounted on here, you can twist this on and off, and that's not gonna be an issue. You could actually leave it balanced and kind of go about it that way. Where again, as the Ronin, it's either a thread on here where you're gonna have to use a screwdriver or some type of coin, so you really have to leave this plate on, and you're gonna have to slide it on and off every time, and then it requires rebalancing. So again, just these small things really add up into an overall better picture for my usability. I'm not talking too much bad on the Ronin. It's a very good gimbal at what it does. It's well built. But at the end of the day, I've just been finding this more usable and something I'm actually more eager to go out and use. That being said, let's talk about build quality. We mentioned the plastic parts on here. So yes, there is plastic used. It doesn't feel as durable as the Ronin. The Ronin's very rugged. It feels very durable. I've actually dropped this when it was unattached out of my backpack once. Took a pretty big drop and it was fine. There's no issues other than a minor little dent on there. Performance-wise, it's been great. The resistance on the knobs are all very good. They've done a very good job on the build quality on here. Price-wise though, this is $380, and I do have a link below for 10% off. It's not an affiliate link. I'm not getting paid for this review. I wanna call that out. They just sent this to me for free. The Ronin is $550, that's the Essentials kit. I actually paid $750 when it came out. That came with the knob and I think an upgraded stand, a few other things with it. So you can get this for $550, this is $380. So there's already a decent price cut there. And then on top of that, the $38 off if you get the 10% off coupon in the store. It's, to me, a no-brainer. I really do like this gimbal. All that being said, I mean, just to prove to you guys, I'm really interested to try the Weeble Lab. I'm thinking about buying that just to put it as a comparison against these two as well. I think the portability against this would be really interesting to see, and both of those are closer to the same price point. I think it's on sale right now for $450. Maybe we'll see that in a future video. So other than build quality, what are you getting for the extra roughly $200? This has an 8-pound payload. This has a 6-pound payload. I know they do have other models that have a higher payload. I haven't used them, so I don't know if they're heavier, what kind of form factor they're dealing with. But at the end of the day, unless you need 8 pounds, 6 pounds is pretty good for most DSLRs. I've had no issues with the EOS-R, with the 16-35 lens and the ND adapter. If you're on a bigger DSLR or something like that, you may want to consider going the Ronin route if you're around that 6-pound threshold, just because this is rated higher. So some of the last things to call out, this does does have USB-C. This is micro USB, as I mentioned earlier, so I do get points to that. The Ronin also has in-body charging, which is another nice thing. I think that's why it has some additional weight and heft to it, because they have to build in the charging mechanism, where this, again, you're gonna use an external charger. So this is gonna be the external charger you're gonna have to travel with. That's my biggest gripe, I think, with this gimbal, to be honest, is the fact that you have to take the batteries out. That being said, too, I want to talk a bit about battery life. I didn't by any means run them from 100% to 0, but I can tell you how much I've used these gimbals. And this, with all the filming I've done over the last few days, it's rated at 12 hours. I don't know that I'm actually going to get 12 hours out of it. I used it for maybe 5 hours or so, and I'm just below 50%. I do know on the Ronin I've used it a ton, and honestly, the battery life seems to be pretty fantastic. I don't think I've ever gone below 50%, and I've used it for hours on end. So both of these are going to have great battery life. For me, in a normal shoot, I'm going to want to charge between anyway, so unless you're out for a 12-hour day, you shouldn't really have issues with either of these. Last up then, comparing these two, let's talk about the grips a bit. So I do like the circular grip on here. It's nice and rubbery. The fact that you can take off the tripod and attach it to the side of this is really nice as well. So it's just gonna give you some extra flexibility when you're shooting. We'll go ahead and set that back down. This does do the same thing, so you can take off the bottom. This is also gonna have a 1/4 inch and a 3/8 inch screw, giving you a little bit more flexibility if you wanna put it on a tripod or a monopod. The other thing I want to call out though, I've had to put a Nato plate on here. I did find, just with how heavy it is, how much it swings around. This for me ended up kind of being an ideal setup. So I've got the handle, I can hold it like this, gives me much smoother panning. I do like this. The fact that you can kind of swap those out easily, you don't have an extra handle to carry, you don't have to take it on and off, is pretty nice. So don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, the Ronin is an amazing gimbal, and for many people, it's their go-to setup. That being said, I've had it since it came out, whatever that's been now, a year, and honestly, I've used it 10 to 15 times max. I actually see myself using this, and that's why I'm so excited to have my hands on this. I feel like I'm gonna travel with it. I think I'm gonna use it out and about, potentially with vlogging, definitely for B-roll. So I give it a big thumbs up. I definitely recommend it. If I had to give a ranking system 1 out of 10, just for my use cases, let me be very specific, I'd probably give the Ronin a 6 out of 10, and that's mostly because it's large. I'd probably give this a 7 out of 10. Ultimately, if this was a little bit smaller, maybe was a little bit better build quality, I'd give it a higher rating, just to kind of give you where my mindset is in terms of that rating. But to me, the most portability is going to be the highest value point on any gimbal you can have, because the smaller it is, the lighter it is, but it's still effective at being a gimbal, the more likely you are to use it. It's like a camera, it's almost like anything else. If it's easy to put in your bag, it's easy to have with you, you're going to end up using it more. So in the next video reviewing this, I want to go ahead and throw the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K on it. I've got some different lenses. You can obviously see a big one here. It's a 40 to 150 Olympus. And then we also have the follow focus. Thank gosh, because this has single autofocus, so I've been looking for something with a follow focus setup to try out with this. That's gonna be it. That's my review on the FeiyuTech AK2000. If you have any questions on it, you wanna know anything about it, leave me some comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.